Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia and across the globe.
Hello again, David Grice, Troy Sincock. It's another podcast and we're talking innovation. Surprise, surprise.
I love it. I just love learning about all these people and what they do.
We're looking at another of our favourite interviews on the In Show podcast today, and this guy was truly incredible. I mean, we saw his CV, realised he'd been up to plenty, but when you actually hear his story, I mean, what a life this guy has led.
For me, this was a real turning point in the way I thought about what the In Show was all about, to be honest. I actually, for the first time, realised that we weren't just talking about products and services, that we were actually talking about people and their stories. And for me, this was one of the most profound interviews that I think that we've ever done, because we had a guy that was so open to sharing his story in a really different way than what I expected. And I think that was just a real defining moment for me with this podcast, and I think it made me grow to love it even more.
His name's Meir Mollem, a jet fighter pilot with over 20 years' experience in management, R&D and operation of state-of-the-art projects, space systems and unmanned aerial systems. He's the CEO and managing director of Sky and Space Global, a company dedicated to providing affordable communication services to anyone, anywhere, anytime. So we caught up with Meir and asked him about his journey into the world of space and where that began.
Well, it started probably when I was in kindergarten, and I got my first book about space and planets and the universe. So I got interested into that as a young boy. Fortunately for me, my parents encouraged me to learn as much as I can and, go to lectures and stuff like that. But then I enlisted to the army, to the military, as is compulsory in Israel, and I found myself at the Air Force for 27 years and almost forgot about that dream. But somewhere down the road, I was fortunate enough to become the project manager for the Israeli first astronaut flight on board the shuttle Columbia. And that got me back into working on space. Later on, I was responsible for setting up as a team the Israeli Air Force Space Systems branch, and then was heavily involved in the Israeli space program. So it was a very natural step for me when I retired from the Air Force to start thinking about setting up my own company, fortunately with very good partners and friends from the space industry, Meidad Pariente and Jonathan Shrama, which are our partners in Sky and Space Global.
How do you get a job like that? You've just made it sound so easy, but how do you go from being a guy involved in the Air Force to literally getting involved in space?
Oh, it's a lot of hard work, a lot of determination. But, at the end of the day, I've gained a lot of experience and know-how and expertise during my years of service. So it was, as I've said, a natural step of thinking, okay, how can I take the things that I'm enthusiastic about, that I'm happy to work on a daily basis, and I'm also quite knowledgeable in them. And from then on, it was just finding the right idea, the right partners who think the same like yourself, who have the shared vision, and trying to set up a company. It's not easy. It's not easy even if you have a very good idea and a very good team, and a very good vision, you still have to find the funding for that. And it takes time. Fortunately for us, we did it, and we did it really good so far.
So what was it like being involved with the space shuttles and the space missions? Did you actually go to space yourself?
No, unfortunately I did not. Not too late for me, but so far no, I have not. But I was fortunate enough to work with NASA on the Shuttle Columbia flight. Unfortunately, it ended as a tragedy with the 7 members of the Columbia dying during re-entry. But it was a very good experience working on such a project for such a long period of time with this professional organization like NASA, with these amazing people, these astronauts, and that has taught me a lot.
What was the impact of the outcome of Columbia on the people involved in the mission?
Well, obviously, it's a personal tragedy, first of all, for the families themselves, for Rona Ramon, Ilan's wife, and the other astronauts' families as well. But it's also an organizational tragedy. I mean, it's think about multi-billion-dollar organizations with tens of thousands of employees that is focused on sending shuttles to space and suffers such a loss. So it puts a stop to the entire operation of the organization. But at the end of the day, you learn from such failures. So space is a risky business. You have to accept the fact that once in a while you'll have to pay some price.
What did you learn?
To focus on the details, to ask questions, to raise doubts, always. Never believe at first hearing on what people are telling you. Always question them. But more than that, question yourselves. Am I making the right decision? Do I have all the facts? Is there something else that I can do to improve my chances? Identify the risk, mitigate the risk.
And at what point do you stop asking those questions? I mean, when there's so much writing on things, how do you get to that end point where you're like, we're all okay here, we've mitigated as much risk as we possibly can, we feel good?
Well, probably when they put you down in the grave, not before that. This is something that it becomes a habit in your daily lives all the time. It's not only, when you're the CEO of the company, it's in everything you do. If you drive your car, did I look in the mirror in the last 30 seconds or not? Probably not. I should look again. And this is just an example. So it's a way of life. It's not that you're paranoid or you're always looking behind your back, but you're just questioning yourself all the time. Can I do better? Have I done the best I can? Is there some way to improve? Have I missed something?
You've really been surrounded by risk your entire career, haven't you, though? You're someone that really puts things on the line.
Well, I don't know. I'm not the kind of guy who goes bungee jumping or
Don't tell me you're scared of bungee jumping when you've been a jet fighter pilot.
I'm terrified of bungee jumping. It's a crazy thing to do. It's much safer to be in a jet fighter and fly and do 9Gs. It's a much safer thing to do.
Tell us about your time in the military.
It was an exciting time and a very, of course, a learning experience. But also to fly jets, it's great. It's a lot of fun. And what you do most of the time is you train, which is a lot of fun. You do air-to-air combat or whatever. But it's not all fun. I mean, after all, you are in the military and you're training towards acts of violence. And unfortunately, in Israel, although we seek peace all the time, once in a while we do have to engage in some kind of combat, and that's the not so fun part of it. It's a very dangerous business. It's a risky business, don't get me wrong. Although I feel more comfortable in an airplane than bungee jumping, it's still a risky business, and you have to be extremely professional when you're doing that. Again, always consider the risk. What would happen if I have an engine cutoff? What do I do? It's always at the back of your mind.
And at the speeds that you fly at as well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You don't have much time to think.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us what led you into getting into the area of satellite and communications.
Yeah. So I retired at 2011. And again, I thought, well, what can I do with what I have, with my experience? I met with Meidad Pariente, one of my partners. He was just leaving the Israel aerospace industry to set up his own business, again, space-related. And we found out that we share the same ideas and thoughts about the space industry. Afterwards, we met Jonathan Shrama, our third partner, and together we started to devise an idea of using advanced satellites, which we call nanosatellites, very small, very unique, very new technology. How can we take that technology and do some kind of viable commercial business with that? And we came to the idea of providing communication services. You may have heard of a company called Planet. They have satellites for remote sensing, so they basically take pictures of the Earth and sell them. We are in a totally different business, communication. Phone calls, instant messaging like WhatsApp, sending a text message, sending and receiving emails, stuff like that.
The value of this is pretty profound because there's so many areas on the planet that haven't got access to any sort of cellular or data networks or anything like that. So the satellite communications is going to be something that's going to be very, very valuable in time to come.
Yes, that's exactly what we were thinking about when we started. And when we researched the market, it was unbelievable. 3 billion people without sustainable connectivity. And, we live in Western society. We're kind of used to megabits per second, high-definition movies on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, but these people cannot even send a text message. And once you can provide them with this kind of possibility and connectivity, it's a game-changing. It's a world-changing technology as far as these areas are concerned.
So where are you with your progress thus far in that field?
Well, we're quite advanced. We have launched our first 3 satellites just 3 months ago. And just so you would appreciate the timeline, we only started 18 months ago our business. So in less than 18 months, we've launched 3 satellites. We've tested them. And for the first time in history, we have demonstrated the possibility to communicate between satellites which are that small. And by that small, they're kind of a shoebox size, 30 centimeters satellite. Not only communicate between the satellite, we have demonstrated doing a phone call from a regular smartphone using a very small device that we call a hotspot to our satellites, and you can do a phone call. You can send a text message. Everything we said we would do, we actually demonstrated. Not only that, our next stage is even more challenging and mind-boggling. It's not 3 satellites, not 30, it's 200 satellites to be deployed over the equatorial region within 2 years. So it's extremely challenging. But we're already working on that at full steam.
How on earth do you get them up there?
A lot of fuel. Rockets. It's rocket science. So there are several companies in the world that provide launch services. It used to be something that only governments did, but as we all know, Elon Musk with SpaceX has broken that monopoly with his private company, and there are several other endeavors. We have a contract with Virgin Orbit, which is a company owned by the Virgin Group, and they're developing a very small, it's almost 30 meters long, but a very small missile to launch satellites such as ours to space. So we have a strategic contract with them, and they will launch some of our constellation, and we are in discussions with other launch providers as well. It's extremely costly, tens of thousands of dollars for 1 kilogram of satellite. So do the math.
And can you only launch one at a time?
Oh, no. You just fill up the missiles with as much as it can carry. So if the capacity is, let's say, 500 kilograms, and you have 5 kilogram satellites, you can put quite a lot of satellites within that.
And how heavy are yours?
The first 3 that we already have in space are 3 kilograms. But our next generation, the Constellation, will be much more capable satellites, so they will be around 8-10 kilograms in mass. But they will be extremely powerful and very capable in order to provide these kinds of services.
And when you fire the missile into space with the satellites, there's some sort of, I was going to say explosion, but clearly not. You don't want to blow up the things you've just sent into space. How does it separate, and how are they distributed across, because I'm assuming what you need them to do is be spread broadly so they can sort of interconnect.
Yes, you're quite right. And that's exactly the way you do it. You put them on board the launcher, but you put them in a kind of device that enables you to deploy them sequentially. So let's say the rocket gets to the orbit and it shoots off one satellite, then it moves on, shoots off another, moves on, shoots off another. And that way you can control the distance between the satellites and put them exactly at the position that you want. And after they are there, the rocket just burns off back to the atmosphere. And then you control the satellites through their own propulsion. So you have a propulsion system on board, and then you can change, not really easily, but you can control the distance between the satellites and ensure that they are in the same formation.
And does the weight of the satellites matter when you're trying to control them in space?
No, not at all. Not at all. It matters for their moment of inertia.
Yep.
The bigger they are, the heavier they are, they have a larger moment of inertia. So if you want to turn them around, it would take a larger mass in order to do that. But other than that, mass has no significance. It's just gravity. That's what's controlling them. And gravity is the same no matter what is the mass.
So what is really motivating you here? Like, I get the opportunity to commercialize this venture. That's really exciting. But it sounds to me like there's a bit of a higher calling for you, the possibility of interconnecting, of having the world connected in a way that it's not currently connected. What does that mean to you?
Well, yesterday I gave a presentation at the IAC, and I started with the company vision. And I've said to the audience, it's not enough to have a very good idea or extremely good technology or even an exceptional team or even the funding. That's not good enough. You have to have some kind of a shared vision in the company in order to push things forward. So our vision is to provide affordable communication services to anyone, anywhere, anytime, including those people that we've just talked about that have been denied so far of this basic human right. And by doing that, what we believe will happen is not only we will change their personal day-to-day lives, we will change the entire infrastructure in the places they live in. Because there's a lot of talk, I don't know how much you're familiar with the term ICT, communication, information, and technology revolution that is going on. And ICT, what it causes, it improves the lives of everyone because we're using technology every day. We're using information every day. We just we don't even know that we're using it. So if we provide better communication to these areas, we provide actually better education because schools will have connectivity. They could get some data. We provide better healthcare, because you could call a doctor remotely and he could diagnose you and give you a medical treatment. We provide better financial systems, again, because you can transfer funds over your phone through financial applications on the phone. You provide better governance, because the government knows what goes on. Was there a flood? Was there an earthquake? Are there fires? Are there some kind of gangs going around and robbing people? So everything improves once you get connectivity. And we believe that's a good call, changing the world for the good, even in minute scale measures.
It's awesome to hear people with such strong vision, and it's I read a quote very recently that those that are crazy enough to think they can change the world are usually those that can. And for me, it was like listening to what you're saying about that purpose and that vision is really, really powerful. Just putting communications aside for a sec, what do you think from a technology point of view is coming that we should be aware of?
First of all, it's very, very difficult to answer that question. And I'm just thinking, what I imagined 20 years ago and what I've imagined 10 years ago and 5 years ago, and the rate that technology improves always surprises me. Always. It moves so fast. So it's very difficult to really know. Think about the smartphones that we have today. Who would have thought when it first came out that the last thing that you would do is use them as a phone to call each other? We're doing everything else other than calling each other, right?
That's true.
So it's very difficult to know. But if we put space technology aside for a moment, I believe blockchain is a very big thing. Not the cryptocurrency, not Bitcoin or Ethereum or that. I mean the blockchain itself, the ability to have unhackable ledgers which are independent of other systems is something very big that we're not sure exactly how to use or how to implement, but that will come within a few years. Miniaturization. Other thing I think that will improve lives, as we talked before, is biomed initiatives, new kinds of drugs and medicines which are based on biological research. Again, saving people from cancer, or saving people from other diseases. That's a really important cause, and I think it would change the world. Just imagine if, for some reason, no more lung cancer. Mm-hmm. What would it do to the world?
Mm-hmm. Maya, what would you say? Obviously, it was really great hearing you still being childlike in your curiosity and your enthusiasm for all these things even now. There's plenty of people that have wonderful ideas that, maybe think that they don't have the skills to execute them, or perhaps they don't have the resources, around them, or they just think it's a crazy idea. No one's going to, take this on board. What would you say to those people? Do you have a word of advice for someone with a crazy idea?
I think I have. We all have crazy ideas. Most of us, like you say, just think to ourselves, oh, yeah, it's a crazy idea. It's nice that I've had it, and you move on with your lives. Some of us think, okay, it's a good idea. Maybe I'll try to do something out of it. And out of these people, very few actually succeed. And I think the main reason for failures out of the people who actually try to pursue their dream is understanding your own limitations. Just the fact that you had the best idea in the world for a new technology, that doesn't mean that you know how to build a business model, you know how to run a company, or you know how to talk to investors, or you know how to even handle human resources within your business. So one of the most important things is to understand that you do not know everything. You have a great idea, great. Find the partners who will help you realize this dream. Now, fortunately for me, and I've mentioned my two partners, the three of us complement each other. So each of us has his own strengths and weaknesses, and we are very much aware of what we can and cannot do, and rely on the other two to help them when they need this kind of help. One of the very common mistakes entrepreneurs do is they never give up on controlling their business. And they might be the world's best engineers, but the world's lousiest businessmen. So you need to really understand that. The second thing is, we always say pursue your dream. Make sure your dream is something which has some foundation in reality. Ask yourself hard questions. And this is also common. When you ask an entrepreneur hard questions on his idea, they think, they're just trying to down-ramp me. They don't want me to succeed. But that's not the case. You should ask yourself the hardest questions to make sure that your idea is viable and is real. And if you do that, all good.
Fantastic. Meir Molam, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to speak to you, and I think you've given every little boy that ever dreamed about space great inspiration for their futures. Thanks so much for joining us on The In Show.
Thank you very much, Troy and David. It's been great to be here. I had a lot of fun.
That's CEO and Managing Director of Sky and Space Global, Meir Molam, one of our favourite in-show interviews. It's David Grice and Troy Sincock on the In-Show podcast, and we're going to hear some words that are really going to uplift you on our next podcast.
Well, we hope they do. We're actually going into the world of story catchers. We interviewed Susan Rooney Harding some time ago now, and she's talking about turning your passion into your career.
That is on the next In-Show podcast.
The In-Show interview. To hear more of The In-Show, subscribe to In-Show on Apple Podcasts or find us at ozcastnetwork.com. A Dave and the Beanstalk production.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.